In the 1970s, Ghana was a nation rich in potential but crippled by political instability, military coups, and economic hardship. Since the overthrow of Kwame Nkrumah in 1966, the country had struggled with one military regime after another, each promising reform but delivering corruption and hardship. By the late 1970s, the economy was in shambles, inflation was soaring, food was scarce, public services had collapsed, and corruption had eaten deep into the fabric of governance. It was against this backdrop of despair that a young, fiery, idealistic Air Force officer, Jerry John Rawlings, rose to national prominence. Jerry Rawlings was born on June 22, 1947, to a Ghanaian mother and a Scottish father. He joined the Ghana Air Force in the 1960s and quickly rose through the ranks to become a flight lieutenant. Charismatic, principled, and deeply disturbed by the corruption he witnessed, Rawlings began to harbor revolutionary thoughts. On May 15, 1979, Rawlings led a group of junior officers and enlisted men in a failed coup against the ruling Supreme Military Council, SMC-2, led by General Frederick Akufo. The plotters were arrested, and Rawlings, then only 32 years old, was put on trial by a military tribunal. In a stunning act of courage and defiance, Rawlings took full responsibility for the coup attempt and used the trial as a national stage to denounce the corruption, oppression, and decay within the Ghanaian leadership. His honesty, boldness, and impassioned speech turned him into a folk hero overnight, especially among ordinary Ghanaians, students, and junior soldiers. While his co-conspirators were quietly pardoned or jailed, Rawlings was sentenced to death. But fate had other plans for Rawlings. While Rawlings awaited execution, his popularity only grew. Sympathetic junior officers and soldiers, angered by the corrupt military elite and inspired by Rawlings' bold stand, plotted to rescue him. On June 4, 1979, they stormed the prison, released Rawlings, and successfully staged a second coup, overthrowing the Supreme Military Council. This time, Rawlings did not act alone. He became the public face and leader of the newly formed Armed Forces Revolutionary Council, AFRC, a military government that promised a radical house-cleaning of Ghana's corrupt institutions. What followed shocked the nation and the world. To purge the country of what the AFRC called decades of rot, Rawlings launched a massive anti-corruption campaign. It was swift, ruthless, and controversial. In June 1979, three former Ghanaian heads of state, General Ignatius Kutu Ashimpong, General Frederick Akufo, and Lieutenant General Akwasi Afrifa, were arrested, tried by military tribunals and sentenced to death. On June 26, 1979, Ghana shocked the world. The three former heads of states were lined up and executed by firing squad in front of millions of Ghanaians. Their deaths marked a turning point in Ghanaian history. Never before had former leaders been so publicly and harshly held accountable. Rawlings justified the executions by declaring that there was no other way to cleanse the soul of the nation, and that the blood of those responsible for Ghana's suffering must be spilled to restore justice and discipline. The executions were met with mixed reactions. While some saw them as necessary sacrifices to free Ghana from corrupt tyranny, others, both locally and internationally, condemned the killings as brutal and excessive. Rawlings had always claimed that his goal was not to stay in power but to cleanse and restore order in Ghana. True to his word, and on September 24, 1979, he handed over power to a democratically elected civilian government led by President Dr. Hilla Limann of the People's National Party, PNP. But Ghana's woes were far from over. President Limann's administration, though civilian, was weak and ineffective. The economic crisis deepened, and corruption slowly returned. Rawlings watched from the sidelines, increasingly frustrated by the situation. On December 31, 1981, just 2 years after stepping down, Rawlings staged another coup, this time without firing a bullet. He toppled Limann's government and declared himself chairman of the Provisional National Defense Council, PNDC. Unlike his earlier revolutionary zeal, Rawlings now embraced a long-term vision of reform. He ruled Ghana with an iron fist but also with a sense of purpose. The PNDC regime focused on grassroots participation, economic stabilization, anti-corruption, and national development. Throughout the 1980s, Rawlings gradually restructured Ghana's political and economic landscape, introducing liberal economic policies under the advice of international financial institutions, while also creating institutions like the People's Defense Committees to involve ordinary citizens in governance. Then came another surprise. In 1992, after over a decade in power, Rawlings transitioned Ghana from military rule to multi-party democracy. He formed the National Democratic Congress, NDC, and contested in the presidential elections. He won and was democratically elected president. He served 2 full terms, 1993 to 2001, before stepping down voluntarily in January 2001, making him one of the few African leaders to successfully transition from military ruler to elected president and then peacefully leave office. Jerry Rawlings remains a complex and controversial figure in African political history. To some, he was a revolutionary hero, a man who dared to speak truth to power and cleanse his nation at great personal risk. To others, he was a military dictator whose early years were marked by bloodshed and repression. But no one denies this, he changed Ghana forever. His execution of 3 former heads of state, though brutal, sent a powerful message to future leaders: corruption, abuse of power, and betrayal of the people would not go unpunished. Under his leadership, Ghana moved from a failed state to one of the most stable democracies in West Africa. He died on November 12, 2020, but the shadow and light of his life still stretch across Ghanaian politics. Jerry Rawlings' life was a paradox: a soldier who fought for democracy, a revolutionary who became president, a condemned man who came back to rule. In the annals of African political history, Rawlings will always be remembered not just for what he did, but for the spirit he ignited, that leadership should serve the people, and that no leader is above justice.